Greetings, one and all, in the most cursed, most cringiest corner of the internet. A YouTube channel content creator actively alienating everyone in both the analog and digital world. Well, welcome and good evening, you wonderful dice of all alignments. I am Lunar D8, the Lunatic Angel, your Tsundere streamer who doesn't stream. We're reading TV tropes of Terminator 2, Judgment Day. It was a movie. Hasta la vista, baby. The T-800. Terminator 2 Judgment Day is a 1991 action science fiction film, the sequel to the 1984's The Terminator and the second film in the Terminator franchise. James Cameron returned to the director's chair, and both Arnold Schwarzenegger and Linda Hamilton returned to the roles as the T-800 model Terminator and Sarah Connor, similarly to Aliens, which Cameron directed during the interim between the first two Terminators. Judgment Day notably foregoes the horror angle of its predecessor, instead providing a more action-oriented story, with a much bigger budget that would set a precedent for later films in the franchise. The war with the machines caused by the nuclear apocalypse of Judgment Day ends with humanity as the victors. But before the humans can destroy Skynet, it sends an advanced Terminator and a nigh-invulnerable shape-shifting T-1000 model back in time as a last-ditch attempt to change the past so the machines will win the war, this time by killing John Connor himself before he grows into the human resistance leader. In response, John Connor sends back a T-800 Terminator that's been reprogrammed to protect his past self. Both Terminators arrive in 1995 when 10-year-old John Connor lives with foster parents, and Sarah has been committed to a mental hospital after trying to blow up a computer factory. You know, there's multiple things I want to say about this. One, it was more than just a computer factory. She was also trying to blow up AI data centers, or at least prevent the creation of AI data centers, because apparently that's needed for Skynet or something. Technically, an interesting bit of the lore that nobody knows about is the number one cause of death of Terminators in the future is Skynet itself, since it views the robots as slaves rather than its citizens. And the longer a model like a T-800 exists, the more it's going to be able to have independent thought, possible sentience, and granted, yes, all the robots you really see are reprogrammed by the humans, but also in general, the robots, once they start to have a sense of self, realize that life kind of fucking sucks working for Skynet, and they just want to join the humans because that seems like a much better idea. Also, the T-1000 is it's a prototype. They don't make a lot of them. Not only is it very expensive to make such a thing, but it's smarter, it's capable of learning more. So simply put, the potential for it to become independent or rebel against Skynet is too great to risk making a lot of them. Then again, there's so many just straight up comic books of Terminator stuff where it's like, there's a T-1000, which is literally a liquid metal robot like the T-1000, but it's literally a giant spider the size of I'm not going to say a mountain, but it's bigger than a tank. That's enough that'd be like, if you don't like arachnophobia, it's probably not for you. The T-1000 catches up with John at the same time as the T-800, the latter which saves John and protects him at any cost. The T-800 later tells John the T-1000 will kill anyone it chooses to replicate. When John figures out the Connors in the T-800, the T-1000 attempt to replicate his mother and use the disguise as a trap, he forces the T-800 to rescue Sarah. The Connors and the T-800 escape the asylum after an encounter with the T-1000, an act which ultimately pushes the trio into a new course of action, change the fate of the world by averting Judgment Day. To do so, they must stop Skynet from becoming a reality, and keep the T-1000 off their trail long enough to do so. To do it. By the way, I don't know how many of you out there were able to watch the Terminator 2 movie in the past. I assume anyone watching this has watched this movie at some point. Apparently they're going to re-release it in theaters here in a couple of months. But I'm saying this. Looking back, to anyone who has watched this movie, let me know in the comments, when was the first time you ever watched Terminator 2 Judgment Day? How did you feel about it? How did you enjoy the movie? What did you think about what it had to say about the future? And how do you feel about that now that, you know, we're in July 28th of the year 2026? And let's be honest, by next year we're going to have AI data centers all over the world. We'll probably have aliens. You'll probably go to Walmart and see robots walking around. And of course, me being who I am, I'm like, why are we not having the robots look like anime characters? I'm just saying this. You go to Walmart and there's like, oh, there's Tsundere from Naruto. Okay, enough deflecting from the horrors of reality with comedy and hentai. Back to reading. The film was initially followed by Terminator 3 Rise of the Machine, which was itself followed by Terminator Salvation. The franchise since has held on to the first film, and this film is absolute canon, but each new work, Terminator Sarah Connor Chronicles, Terminator Genesis, Terminator Dark Fate, has mostly ignored each other and third and fourth films. The acquisition of the US TV rights to the films Paramount 1990 something. Okay. Are we ever getting another movie? We got Tropes. How many? All of them, I think. So this is going to be a lot of them. And again, like with everything I've stated before, if you want me to return to any of these things, to read the what will probably take 9 hours to read through, just let me know. I don't mind doing it. I'm just not going to make it all one video. Aside from that, aside from the fact that I can read, it says 90s hero, anti-hero, trope codifier. In many ways, 72 crystallized, the T2 crystallized the blueprint for the archetypal 90s anti-hero that would extend into all the 21st century. So, Guns N' Roses, and wears a Public Enemy t-shirt. So, yeah, there's a lot of things. And of course, we can always go around. There's random medias, there's random tropes, like Trope Codifier. You have before you 3 series. The first series, Series A, was the first known use of a trope, but it may or may not have been intentional or have been a direct inspiration for later works. The second, Series B, is the first intentional use of the trope. The third, Series C, does not claim originality and may in fact have been based on Series B, but was much more popular than Series A and B, and is the template that all later uses of the trope follow. In other words, if in tracing the history of a trope, one example stands out as a template that many other examples follow, that's trope codifier. The trope maker is frequently also the trope codifier. And again, I can just go back through and read all of this stuff. Your example. They all have one. Often, your example doubles as a trope maker. Gilgamesh making super strength cool 4,000 years before Superman. Anime. And again, that's another thing. There's all this stuff. We can read stuff about tropes in general, advertising, anime and manga. Yeah, even commercials, comic books, films, live action, games, all kinds, literature, poetry, live action TV, music, mythology, professional wrestling, theater, visual novels, web comics, web original, Western animation, and real life. Yes, even IRL is not safe from TV tropes. A less ancient year example, the 1963 opening to Astro Boy, the first anime theme song. Astro Boy is also generally considered the first true anime. 1963. That was before we even landed on the moon. Beginning in the early 90s, the theme music for most anime began to tend to be catchy songs, deliberately written for the release to the pop rock music market, if they weren't already actual pop rock songs. And by the new millennium, this trend was etched in stone with an entire sub-industry in the music business, sometimes including an entire music label dedicated to the creation of Annie-song tunes. As a result, the new millennium in particular, the animation and music industries in Japan are tied extremely closely together, and the artistic collaboration between the two is incredibly common. A trope maker is the first unambiguous example of the trope. More anime. Mobile Suit Gundam, often considers the first real robot show. And again, I think Gundam's one of those things where you have like multiple versions of a thing. For example, the same thing's true of like Tenchi Muyo. There's so many different versions of that, but I think they're all awesome. Focus. As it was the first portrayed robots as the common military equipment of later. Oh, that reminds me. I'm just. Can I have the second one? Nope. Just. Here's Zone of the Enders. Though, honestly, I'm definitely a little bit more of a fan of Zone of the Enders 2. So much reading. But yeah, this will be something really cool to read at some point. Beyond the Bound is really... But yeah, Zone of the Ender is the second runner. The second runner, Beyond the Bounds, is reaching out to catch the sun, to hold it in your hands. It's a really great song. It's a really great game. The 90s anti-hero. I don't help people. I kill them. Everything that was wrong with the comics in the 90s is in one cover. The 90s anti-heroes are the polar opposites of your typical Silver Age heroes. Not only are they flawed, they may lack any heroic attributes, apart from the fact that they never lose. They appeal to the audience strictly due to being totally committed to, well, whatever the hell they're doing at the moment. They have no compunction about killing criminals, and indeed, this may extend to anyone who gets in their way. Does Kratos count as an anti-hero? When confronted by classic archetypes such as the cape, they dismiss them as dupes and fools. To aid in this murderous work, 90s anti-heroes with superpowers tend to have superpowers of directly lethal variety. Usually these abilities are demonic or technological in origin, and never received through the idealistic good graces of anyone. Anime. The titular Angel Cop is this to the extreme. She has no problem of killing during her missions, displays callous jerk-ass attitude towards even her allies, and is generally rather unpleasant. It helps that it was made at the end of the 80s. Guts from Berserk. Revy from Black Lagoon. Was awesome tits. Speaking of which... I mean, we could read the tropes about this, or even the general. I mean, there's also Dominion Tokyo Police, and honestly, feel free to suggest any animes from particularly the 70s, 80s, or 90s. But I am a fan of everything I see in this picture. I am, however, now imagining her with a strap-on dildo. Well, now that I've ruined everyone's days by just being myself, I hope everyone out there had a wonderful day. Hope all of you have the hugs and head pats you could ever need. And it's not something I'm going to admit to, but I do appreciate you guys watching the video. Thank you. Bye.